Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Needy No More, the podcast dedicated to healing the anxious attachment style. I'm your host, anxious attachment style coach and author, Chris Ratcliffe. I've helped thousands of people across 6 continents to end the cycle of anxious attachment through my books, workshops, digital downloads, and coaching program. I'm honored to carry on that mission here, sharing tools and techniques, principles and practices for you to explore on your journey to growing more secure. Welcome back, everyone. I am very excited to welcome our second ever guest, Rikki Cloos, who is a relationship writer. You might also be familiar with her from her Instagram account at Anxious Hearts Guide. She's also the co-host of the podcast, Rikki and Jimmy on Relationships. She's an expert in attachment styles, posts a lot of really helpful content, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you on the show, Rikki. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. I had no idea I was your second guest. This feels like a special privilege. I like it.
Well, thank you. Well, I appreciate you carving out the time. You're one of my absolute favorite people in the attachment space to follow. You and I have been in contact for several years, and this feels like just an opportunity to chat with a friend who cares about attachment theory too.
It does. I think our missions are well aligned too. Everything that you post that I see, I'm always like, I like that guy. He gets it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I wanted to open up our conversation just by asking you a very simple question, which is, how did you get into this stuff?
Yeah.
When did you find attachment theory and why did it resonate with you?
Yeah, that's such a good place to start. To set the scene, I'm like 32, 33, and my marriage was falling apart. I'd been with him for 12 years. Which is a while. That's quite a haul. And it was okay in the beginning, but then it just gradually went downhill and I didn't know why. And then by the time everything kind of went up in smoke, I had really started digging into the psychology textbooks, because that's the type of person I am. When stuff starts to hit the fan, I like to figure out why. So I'd been doing a lot of reading and I kind of just stumbled across attachment theory. This was, I don't know, 2016, 2017. So it wasn't such a popular topic as it is now. I think Attached had not been out too long, but I got my hands on that book and then many others, mostly dry psychology textbooks because it wasn't a market full of popular reading on that topic. I was like, this is me, this is my relationship, and this is what's happening to us. Unfortunately, the book Attached, although I really liked it, was pretty hard on avoidant attachment. The author, Levine, he's come out to say too that he wishes he would have written it differently because it really doesn't paint avoidant attachment very hopefully. And I have to say, it's one of the reasons that I decided to leave my marriage because that book didn't give me any hope that we could fix what was going on. I recognized myself as incredibly anxiously attached and my now ex-husband as incredibly avoidantly attached. And we would sit in marriage counseling just saying, hey, we've identified the problem and we're not compatible, so this is over. And that's where my journey started. We split up. And I realized that if I didn't fix or at least address my anxious tendencies and thoughts, I was going to find myself right back in that pattern. I was going to chase away the healthy, secure partners that I was hoping to attract. So that's where it all started. I really just threw everything in the kitchen sink at my attachment issues. Slowly, little by little, they got better. And then things started feeling really easy in love. And I thought, I'm a writer, so I thought I want to tell people about this. Instagram and my book were my way of talking to the world about it. I didn't want anybody else to feel like I did or go through what I did. So that's how my mission started. I think yours is pretty similar, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to say that. You know, there's so many similarities between our journeys here. It is uncanny. It's very interesting. I think there's also a universality to it, right? That makes attachment theory so relatable and so helpful for many people. There's this moment of discovery where you kind of find out that, okay, the way I'm showing up in my relationships, this is a thing. Like, this has been studied. It is a known phenomenon that has a label, and I'm not the only one who struggles like this.
Totally. And
And
even better,
regardless of,
we can do
yeah, yeah,
something about it, you know? I mean, that's the best part. It's not just like, oh, I've got this disorder that I'll always have trouble with. It's like, it's not a disorder at all. It's a pattern of behaviors that we can change. Not to totally
wonderfully
interrupt, but
said.
this is my favorite topic, just like you. I get
Wonderfully said,
excited.
yeah. It's not static, it's not fixed. You can always evolve to a more secure place, to the more secure side of the attachment spectrum. And that's the hope that it sounds like you were also kind of missing
Mm-hmm.
when you were looking to resolve the differences in your marriage.
Absolutely.
I talk to people all day long, all around the world about attachment theory. And I've coached folks across the world. And one of the most persistent themes or things that I hear from folks is, I never want to date another avoidant.
Oh, I know. I'm always so sad when I hear that. Yeah. Keep going on that.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that? I know how I respond to it, and I hope it's similar to how
I
you
tell
do.
them to look at the person and not the label.
Yeah, that's
Because,
good advice.
look, not all Christians are the same, not all Democrats are the same, or
Sure.
Republicans are the same. Like, when you stereotype people and you put folks who might have similar qualities
Yeah.
into a bucket and then judge them,
Yeah.
it's dehumanizing.
Absolutely.
And it's using labels in a really, really limiting way,
Mm-hmm.
because humans are complex and highly nuanced,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't always fit into neat, tidy boxes.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I encourage folks to look for someone who is self-aware, someone who is willing to put in the effort to grow the relationship, who has at least some skills when it comes to effective communication
Yeah.
and conflict resolution and repair. No one's going to do this stuff perfectly. Even the most secure people struggle with insecurities and might have avoidant tendencies from time to time. So it's really limiting to just throw out an entire category of people because they've identified with a label that says that they are avoidant.
Really well said. I think another important thing, this is something that I was missing in the beginning of my journey too, was that when we spend all of our time pointing at the other person, what's wrong with them, we're missing all the ways that we are actually like enabling that dynamic in our own relationship. Of course, I started off dating post-divorce saying, no more avoidance. I'm going to avoid the avoidance. You can almost make that a bumper sticker. And that attitude, it gave me zero awareness about how I was kind of perpetuating that in anybody that I would find. I could make secure men avoidant with my behavior, and I didn't realize that either. So that's one of the biggest things I try to tell my audience when they try to bash the avoidance is, hey, when we're spending too much time focusing on what other people are doing wrong, we're not looking at our own contributions to this. And that can, it can taint even super healthy relationships that we find, or not super healthy relationships, but it can flavor our interactions with anybody that we find, no matter what their attachment style.
100%, yes. Amen to that. The goal is always to grow more secure. It's not just to find someone secure, because you can repeat patterns with similar people. You repeat what you don't repair.
Yeah.
And yes, other people do respond to our energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a dynamic is.
Yes.
You're responding to their energy, they're responding to yours. And that's also why there's hope here for folks listening or watching who might be in this kind of anxious avoidant relationship or dynamic. Because when one person shifts their approach, it provides for the opportunity for the dynamic to shift. It doesn't guarantee it.
Right.
It's also not about outcomes.
Right.
But it does help when you can show up from a more secure place, when you can own and embody who you are and what you need. People respond a lot better to that.
They do.
And that's a big focus of your content too.
It is. It's a huge focus, because this was such a good segue into, I was going to say, the most exciting person that I met post-divorce was now my current husband, Chris. It's funny. His name is also Chris, and he was about as avoidant as you could possibly be. Like a jerk, I made him take the test because that's who I was back in the day. I made him take
Hmm.
the attachment test, and he scored all the way on the end of the avoidance spectrum. And I thought, oh boy, I've got my work cut out for me. Like this is
Did that freak you out?
it did. It did freak me out, but like any good anxious attacher, I couldn't quit him because he was just so, it's almost magnetic the way those two get pulled together, those two sides. I really thought I'm not ready to let this one go. I'm just going to work really hard on my side of things and see how that works because I wasn't crazy enough to try to convince him to dive deep into this with me. Thank goodness I didn't do that. That would have pushed him away. But I got to say, it was maybe just like a year of really intensely working on my own side of things. And I got to tell you, Chris, he's incredibly secure now. And that's not him diving in and reading every book. I think that our own security can really pull our partner up to our level if we're really rock solid in it.
I believe that wholeheartedly
Mm-hmm.
too. Talk to me about how you found that security for yourself.
Yeah,
I think that's a big focus of your first book,
it
right?
is. It is. Yes, you're
Anxious
right.
Heart's Guide?
Yes, The Anxious Heart's Guide. My first book, I was still like largely single while I wrote it, and so thank goodness I had complete self-focus on that one, which I think is a great place to start for anxious attachers. It should start with us, you know. I identified a bunch of really key things that were holding me back. Maybe one of the biggest ones was I had an incredibly negative inner monologue. My self dialogue with myself was awful. I was not my own best self advocate. I was the angry voice inside me that was shaming me for everything I did. That held me back a lot until I want to say Kristen Neff is my favorite author on self compassion and learning to be more self compassionate with yourself, that inner voice, so that you're not going, you're so dumb for doing that. Those terrible things that everybody says to themselves. My inner voice is super kind now. That doesn't mean I'm always 100% of the time super kind, but the vast majority of the time, I've got like a really gentle inner voice that's saying, that sucked. I didn't like that at all, but here's what I'm going to do differently. And here's why it's understandable that you made that mistake. When you're not beating yourself up for your mistakes, it really helps get you through all the other steps toward security. So I want to say that's a great place to start, is working on that inner voice, because the other things that I needed to do, which were getting myself out of the house alone, not depending on somebody else like a partner or a love interest to make my day special and wonderful. I needed an inner cheerleader to be able to help me through that, because it was kind of scary in the beginning. I mean, sounds extreme, but it was the right word. The idea of leaving my house and going to eat at a restaurant alone, or go to the rock climbing gym and have people see me walk in single, that kind of stuff legitimately freaked me out in the beginning. So having that kind inner voice going, you can do this. This is the thing that we're working toward. And good job just getting out of the house, even if you didn't make it all the way to the gym today. That was immensely helpful.
Look, they call it self-conscious
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah.
When your consciousness is directed in such an intense way internally, it feels like you've got the light of all of your attention on yourself. It's a lot of pressure. And anxious attachers are some of the most self-deprecating, self-judgmental, self-critical people out there. And yet we're also some of the most empathetic and naturally empathic. And so we're using some of those abilities to our own detriment, which is really damaging.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, as I say to clients, it is an amalgamation of the most critical voices that we experienced growing up and in previous relationships. So we end up taking the weapons of others and using them against ourselves, and then asking ourselves, why am I so hurt? I mean, you're beating yourself up. That's why you're hurt, of course. So changing that inner dialogue for yourself, was it affirmations? Was it like journaling? How did you bridge that gap for yourself? Was it just intervening? Or?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was reading several different books at the same time while I was working on that, as I do. So probably a mixture of different techniques. I don't love affirmations, and that's not to say that they're not great for other people, but for me, the sentences felt really fake. So they didn't do anything for me personally because I still had that voice going, you don't really believe that in the background. So rather than affirmations, I think, how can I say this? Okay, here's a good example. Like, you're lovable wouldn't have done anything. That wouldn't have touched me because I didn't believe it, right? But I did believe that I would say, you're doing things to increase your lovability right now, and that's awesome. So I think I was more praising my efforts instead of trying to tell myself things that I didn't really believe. Because I did believe I was doing things to change the situation, and I was very proud of that. So maybe like ultra realistic affirmations
Well,
that
yeah,
helped.
authentic ones.
Yeah,
I
very
mean,
authentic, right. I didn't say, if I didn't believe it, I didn't say it again because I was like, that's not going to help me. I also worked really hard. Being a writer, journaling comes very easy to me. So my journal was just rife with, if I felt anything negative or self-deprecating, I wrote that down. And then I wrote arguments against it, or or ways that I could address that if it was something that I did believe. So that was very helpful. All the journaling about that helped me become more aware of it in the moment when it was happening to me in real life, in real time. So that was super helpful. I also made sure to spend extra time with the people in my life who were just naturally very supportive. That was so helpful. My sister, who's always been one of my biggest cheerleaders, if I ever needed a pick me up, I could call her and she made me feel like a rock star. I have an awesome best friend. He always knows exactly what to say when I'm upset. So that helped. This may sound cliche, but my mom is always a big pick me up. She was I can do no wrong in her eyes, so that was nice. If I really needed to bring in the big guns, I'd call my mom. So those were some of the things that really changed the way that I talk to myself. Practice. I know nobody likes to hear that, but just practicing saying, saying supportive things, it really does. You can really rewire that just by repetition, I think.
amen to that. Yes, was just going to say that.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Repetition plus consistency, that is what rewiring is all about. That's how the
Yeah.
brain learns and learns to adjust its
Yeah.
wiring and its pathways. So, yes, practice
Yeah.
does help. You got to
One
put in the motions, even if you don't fully understand where it's going.
Absolutely. And my favorite part of all that repetition too is that speaking kindly to yourself feels good. It's not like dieting where you're like constantly thinking about the ice cream cone that you can't have. It's like saying something kind to yourself just feels a lot better than being hard on yourself. So I felt like that was actually a pretty easy one to get into a habit of.
It's so relieving. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're constantly beating yourself up, the internal dialogue, that your space internally, it becomes defined by conflict and war. And
Yeah.
how are you supposed to be at peace if you're at war with yourself? I mean, it's really difficult to have a sense of groundedness, of feeling stable when you're constantly berating
Yeah.
yourself. So when you learn to change some of that dialogue, to maybe interrupt it and then
hmm
replace it with something more loving, it's a breath of fresh air. I always say to people, if the way that other people speak to you matters, why would it not matter how you speak to yourself?
Absolutely. And on that note, exactly, by speaking to myself kindly, it started to really lower my tolerance for other people speaking negatively to me in a big way. A big way. I can't believe the things that I used to let other people say to me and I would either believe or just let roll off my back. I don't do that now. And that took a lot of practice too to be able to speak up and you don't have to be angry or harsh about it, but just a gentle word like, hey, that hurt, or hey, that's not the way I want to have a conversation like this. Let's try that again.
Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It changed all of my relationships, not just my romantic one, but literally everyone I interact with. It's different now in the best way.
I love what you said too about your support system, because
hmm
one of the biggest things I espouse in my work is a concept I developed called emotional diversification,
Wonderful. Yeah,
which,
that's in your book. Yeah.
yes, exactly. Yes,
hmm
thank you. And it's like a pie chart approach, right? I'm borrowing this from the world of finance and investing. So it helps, I think, for the logical brain, for people that kind of think more that way. And for us as anxious attachers, we do tend to live more in the logical, rational mind versus the body. And so from that perspective, it just gives like a little visual where you can see, okay, right now I am very over invested in my romantic partnership. And by the way, it is okay to have a romantic partner take up a good amount of your time and your energy.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that.
However, they cannot be your end all be all. They are just a human being. There's only so much that they can do for you, and they're not a human need fulfilling ATM. You can't just go to them and take a withdrawal when it's convenient for you.
And here's another thing. What if the universe takes them away, right? Now I'm saying even if they're fully 100% in and they love you so much and they're not going anywhere and they like spending 100% of their time with you, the universe can take that person away from you. And I know that's dark, but it's real. And
It is.
And if your entire happiness in the world hinges on one person and the universe takes them away for one reason or another, what have you got,
What if you had 100% of your investments in Tesla recently and then watched that tank? This is why this example works for people, because it helps them to understand it's very risky when you do that. For some reason, it's easier for people to understand that with their money than it is with their feelings and their heart, but it helps to drive the point home, I think.
Yeah, that's what and I do. We try to make it accessible and easy to understand, You're very good at that too, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. It's exactly how I feel about you. And every piece of content that I see of yours, I'm like, yes, that's a magic phrase. That's a magic phrase. Love it. And I love how inclusive and also, quite frankly, vulnerable you are in your content, sharing, moments of conflict that you've had with Chris.
Yeah.
And talking about how you've worked through that.
Yeah, totally. I'm trying to do that more. It's scary sharing actual pieces of yourself on the internet. Yeah. It's very easy to throw out a tool or an idea that you get from somewhere else, someone or somewhere else, but throwing out actual examples from your own real life to the faceless internet masses can be a little bit terrifying. I do like to do that whenever I think there's like a concrete takeaway that somebody might learn something that might make their life a little bit better. Conflict with I hate even calling him my avoidant partner because it feels so secure and good now, but conflict with my partner was a really terrifying thing early on in our relationship. And I weirdly almost look forward to it now because it seems like we always learn something new about each other in the process of conflict and especially afterwards. And it brings us closer than before the conflict happened. I know that's not going to be an easy sell because everybody hates conflict so much, but it can become something kind of weirdly good.
It's an opportunity when treated appropriately for each person within the relationship to better learn how to love the other person as well as themselves a bit better.
Yes.
I remind people that conflict is not the end of the relationship because many people equate conflict with abandonment.
Yeah.
They observed this growing up and they've experienced this previously. I also think in our dating culture today, it's really easy to kind of throw people out when something happens that you don't like.
Yeah, and that's the Amazon effect in the dating culture too. It's like if this product doesn't work well for me, I could just order another one and it'll be at my door in less than a week.
Yes, people become disposable just like things. Yeah, I love that phrasing, the Amazon effect. I haven't heard that yet.
I don't know. I don't know if I got that somewhere or made it up, but that's what it reminds me of,
It's so poignant. Yeah, it really drives, the point home. It's really easy to replace someone, to dispose of them.
Yeah.
When something happens that you don't like. And yet conflict is the process by which the relationship becomes safer, more intimate, and the connection is actually able to deepen. And this drives home a really important point, which is that safe relationships aren't just found, they are built.
They're created, aren't they? Yes, I love that. It reminds me of anytime I have a conflict with him too. I want everybody to know it's not like we sit around holding hands and we're like, this feels so good disagreeing with you. It feels awful. I want people to know that in the moment, conflict is not fun and it's difficult. And it's really like each moment that I'm in it, I'm like, I wish this wasn't happening, but we still plod through and talk to each other and figure out the difficult things and try to use the kind phrases even when we're angry. That's what it is, really. Honestly, I've been really feeling a lot of passion about conflict in this part of my life because I feel like there's a lot of good stuff to be mined from it. You know, once you kind of wade through the anxious attachment and you find yourself in a secure relationship, really conflict is it's a great place to find more work if that's what you want because there's a lot to learn to get good at it.
Well, even taking that perspective, that's coming from a secure place from an attachment standpoint.
Yeah.
So you said something earlier about, you focused on yourself. You really worked at growing more secure and learning to be gentler and more compassionate
Mm-hmm.
with yourself. And that seems like it's not only translated into helping your partner to feel more secure and to grow more secure himself, but it's completely altered the trajectory of your relationship. And I would just love to hear how that process has unfolded because I'm sure it's been messy and
Oh
touch and
yeah.
go and start and stop and moving in different directions.
Yeah.
Conflict can be really scary for an anxious attacher
Yeah.
and for an avoidant too, who is most triggered by criticism and
Mm-hmm.
judgment and pressure. So, how have you and Chris really navigated this together? What do you want people watching this and listening, and people reading your second book, which is focused on
Oh
healing
yes.
the anxious avoidant dynamic? Yes, Anxious and Avoidant, Healing the Dynamic. Yes, by
Yeah.
Rikki Cloos,
Thank
available
you.
now. What do you want people to take away from your relationship and what you're modeling and from what you're putting out there in your book as well as on Instagram at all?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that there's just a massive amount of hope for relationships like this. That's what I didn't have when I left my marriage. And that's what I kind of had in spades once I met Chris. And I had an inkling that things could be different and better if we changed the dynamic, right? And that's all it took was just that little seed of hope. And it doesn't mean that we had a great time of it. I mean, as long as we're talking about vulnerability, Chris and I broke up 8 times in the very beginning of our relationship, which is a
Wow.
massive amount of breakups. I know. We started keeping track. It started getting funny because it was happening so often. We were the classic anxious and avoidant couple. I would cling and he would run. And sometimes if our conflict or clinging or running got bad enough, I would pull the plug. 6 of the breakups were mine and I would go,
Wow.
"Oh, this is pointless. I'm pulling the plug." But it was never more than 24 hours before he or I would call each other again and say, "Do you really want to split up, or do we just not know how to work through this very specific fight that we're having, which is different from the fight that we had a month ago, you know?" And both times either person would say, "I don't want to break up at all. I've been thinking about you constantly the last 24 hours. Let's get some coffee and talk about it." So really, we had to learn how to have conflict together. And once we did that, there was no need to break up anymore because then every difficult situation or conversation was literally just, okay, it's conflict time. Let's see what you need, see what I need, let's talk it out. And then repair afterward is always wonderful too. Then let's snuggle and watch a movie to make sure that we, still feel good about each other and we're not both still angry. And I gotta say, when the conflict times aren't terrifying anymore, it's a lot easier to stop clinging. And for him, it was a lot easier to stop running. We figured out how to have conflict, and my work on just being more independent in general made it so that he didn't feel like as much need to run away, which just made me even more independent, and kind of pushed us both towards security. In Anxious and Avoidant, Healing the Dynamic, I spend a third of the book talking about how to deal with the anxious side, and then another third of the book talking about how to deal with the avoidant side, and then the last third talking about ways that we deal with that together, work that's done by both partners. But even if it's just one person working on their side, like I did in the very beginning, I think this is Julie Manano that I want to attribute this quote to, but one person can't save a relationship, but they can change the entire atmosphere of it. And in an environment with a changed atmosphere, the relationship just has a lot better chance of healing and finding itself in a good place.
Well said. I love Julie's content as well. I
It's
think
the
she's
best.
at the Secure Relationship
Yeah,
on Instagram
that's
for
her.
those
She's
watching and
phenomenal.
listening.
And
Yeah,
her
and she has
book,
a new book too.
yes, her book on healing anxious and avoidant attachment. I think it's called Secure Love, and it's phenomenal. It's absolutely worth a read as well.
Love these recos.
Yeah, I have them for days. All I do is read. I love it.
I can relate to that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of anxious attachers can. You know, many
Yeah,
of
we're
us
hard
are
workers, aren't we?
self healers. Yes, exactly. And there's something about reading a book that really gets you and you see yourself in the words on the pages that is really transformational
Yeah.
and really impactful. And
Hopeful.
I do think for many people it started or starts with attached, which
Yeah.
is flawed, as we all know.
Right,
You know, no
right.
book is perfect. One of my biggest gripes with attached is that it tends to advise to just not grow more secure, but to find someone
Yeah.
secure.
Yeah. That's my biggest problem with it as well. And you say there are no perfect books, but I think I may be biased, but I think the closest to perfection that we've got is Wired for Love by Stan Tatkin. He's just, and I'm biased because Stan is probably one of the most compassionate people I've ever read on attachment ever. Just every single style. I mean, if I had to point to one source that really informed the way that I look at attachment more than any others, it would be Stan Tatkin and how he just his massive amount of compassion toward all the attachment styles. Um, I think compassion and empathy for each other is another way that we heal that dynamic, because being able to see the other person as a human who's trying and flawed and is going to screw it up every now and then, that's a glue. It really is a glue that it makes it a lot tougher to pull a couple apart when we can see each other as two people who are trying our best.
It's basically anti the Amazon effect that we
Right,
were talking
exactly.
about. You know, you're finding that humanity again, that compassion again. You're really seeing that person for their complexities. You know, people are just responding from their level of self awareness and healing. And there's a lot of people out there who want to love deeply, but might not know how.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they can't have a healthy relationship, but it's going to take work for them to develop those skills. And the more that they get discarded by
Hmm.
people, the more it makes them want to clam up, shut down, not try again, not put in
Right.
the effort. So when you can see someone for their scars and their wounds and see beyond that too, it
Yeah.
really is transformational, and compassion is deeply healing. It's the essence of healing.
It is, absolutely. If we'd like to inject even a little more nuance into this conversation, I think it's important to say, too, if you're in a relationship and you've been there for years and years and years, and the other person absolutely is not working at all and nothing's changing, I'm also a very big proponent of letting a relationship go that's not that I mean, you've really given it your best effort and the other person is not making it any easier. It's okay to walk away from something like that. And that comes from the compassionate voice in me too, because sometimes the voice that we think is really caring and compassionate is actually making life really hard for us, because they're saying, you can do it, just keep trying to change this person a little bit harder. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out. If I had any naysayers or people who were like very anti Rikki on the internet, I think their critique would be that I'm a little too hopeful. So I do want to throw out that I definitely don't think every relationship is salvageable. But if I had to put a number on it, I would say most, I think, are probably okay. More okay than we give them credit for being.
Yes, and that is because more often than not, most people are giving you everything that they have to
Yeah.
give.
Yeah.
but it might not be in the ways that we receive. And so they're speaking
Mhm.
Greek to us, we're speaking Arabic to them, and
Yeah.
nobody's speaking the same language. And that's really tough. It doesn't mean that you can't get on the same page. You can learn to translate, you
Hmm.
can learn to comprehend what each person is saying and the way that they're giving love. And love languages are a pathway, one pathway
Yeah.
for this. There's many. Attachment theory is also another pathway to understanding why certain people respond the way that they do, or what triggers them and what their patterns are in terms of responding to those triggers.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways of looking at this. But at the end of the day, what you're saying is something that I echo a lot of times too, which is one, it always takes two people to make the relationship work. It can take one person to affect change or an alteration or an evolution in
Hmm.
the connection, but the other person then has to respond to that. And, I think it's also important to say that one of the most loving things you can ever do for someone is, if you really have given it everything you've got over the course of months and months and months and maybe even years, you come to a crossroads where you have to decide, can I love this person in the ways that they need to be
Mm.
loved? Can I accept that there are some things about them that will never change? Can
Yeah.
I love them exactly as they are? And it was Marianne Williamson who, in A Return to Love, wrote that it is our failure to accept people exactly as they are that gives us pain in a relationship.
That's gorgeous.
And that perspective of compassion is, I think, what you're saying. But compassion is only going to get you so far. It doesn't guarantee that the other person is going to receive that
Yeah.
and then to do their part to create a more compassionate connection. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is release someone to be loved in the ways that they need to be loved. Breaking up doesn't always have to be, and oftentimes isn't, the end of the connection, because you're still connecting to them with your thoughts about the relationship long after it's over.
Sure.
So remember that too. If you're watching this or listening to this, it can be an act of unconditional love to release someone
And
to be
not,
loved better by someone else.
yes, and not necessarily a failure either. I don't look at my marriage as a failed relationship anymore. I definitely used to right when I got divorced, but now I look back and it was just the end of something. Myself and my ex-husband have both found ourselves in relationships now that are much better suited to us individually. I think we're a lot happier now than when we were together. And when you look at it that way, it's like, how could anybody call that a failure?
Well said. There's a paragraph in Needy No More, the book, that goes into this, where I talk about how I'm baffled by people saying that a relationship failed, because
Yeah.
relationships are about learning. The only way it fails is if you fail to learn from the ways that you showed up and
Wonderful.
from the lessons that are there laid bare for you to pick up and to say, okay, this wasn't working in this connection. What does this say about the way that I show up in relationships? And what does this say about what I need in relationships? And how can I better own and embody and honor those things instead of beating myself up for my sensitivity or for wanting communication,
Yeah.
as many anxious attachers do?
Right. Right. Oh, this is why I love talking to you, Chris. You really, you have a great way of putting these things too, that I'm sure the audience who's watching and listening are nodding, going, yeah, that's how I feel about it. I love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much. I'm a words of affirmation person for people
All
listening.
right.
So if you want to rate the podcast, leave a review,
Yes.
comment on Spotify, love all of the above. It's, sometimes when you're hosting a show or when you're putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, like what we've been talking about, because I've talked very openly about my own traumas and what happened with my mom and my sister and my dad and exes, and it's tough sometimes. But when you put yourself out there like that, it can feel sometimes like you're speaking into an echo chamber or nobody's listening either.
Yeah.
So if you have creators that you follow online who, like Rikki and myself, post a lot of content and are very vulnerable in what they post, please write to us,
Yes.
comment, and tell us as much.
That's
We appreciate that too.
That's the fuel that keeps me writing, honestly, is messages from people saying, "Hey, that thing that you said the other day actually helped and makes me feel better." And that's what keeps me going. I don't think I would do this if that didn't exist, because that's what I need to feel like this is worth it and something that's very meaningful to me. Hearing that it's helpful.
Well, long before you and I ever connected like this on a
Mhm.
professional level, when I saw your content from afar, I always respected and admired your approach to this and the compassion that clearly shines through your approach to content creation, to what you share of yourself. And I know that other people online see that too. And I hope that you know how impactful that is. I know you see the numbers, you see your following. I see it too for myself on TikTok and Instagram and elsewhere. And the numbers
Yeah.
help, of course.
Yeah.
Those are boosts
They're
too.
boosts, but yeah, no, the biggest one is having people just tell me with their words, and I'm sure tell you with their words, this is actually what I needed to hear. Thanks for saying it.
Yes, exactly. Tell the people that you admire online that you admire them,
Yeah,
please.
right. And
This is me telling you, Rikki.
yeah, I know. Well, thank you. I had no idea you were watching from before we met too. That's like I said, attached really kind of broke my spirit, and then my boy Stan Tatkin he like lifted me up again and was like, "Hey, we can look at this compassionately." And I really think empathy and compassion is it's the way to go. I try to make my little corner of the internet better than a lot of what I see, in that I want the world to be more compassionate with each other and themselves, and that's what I'm going for.
And inclusive and
Yes.
flexible and understanding and empathetic and encouraging. There's a lot of the opposite in our world today, as we all know. It's shoved in our face, and sometimes it can feel like the positive aspects, the light, if you will, to be cliche. The light is difficult to see through the darkness, but it is there, and you are shining that light. I
Thanks.
do want to talk about Stan's work a little bit. I am familiar with his work. I believe he characterizes the avoidant as the island.
Yes, the island.
For those who aren't familiar with Stan's work, tell them about it and what about it impacted you beyond the compassionate
Yeah.
approach.
Okay, so even the titles anxious attacher and avoidant attacher are a little bit harsh and invite judgment. And
Yes,
Stan knew that, and so he rebranded the attachment styles. Like we just said, the avoidants are islands. They kind of feel safer. It's all about safety with Stan. Islands feel safer standing alone. He characterized the anxious attacher as a wave. Waves feel safety in crashing against islands or whoever they can find. And then, what did he call the secure anchor? The secures are anchors, which is such a what a lovely metaphor. He's good with words too. Yeah, and the anchors kind of stay where they are and make everybody else feel like they're safe and secure as well. Stan
grounded,
is
stable.
Stan's a couples therapist, and I think his biggest thing is empathy and hearing each other and using the kindest words possible. That also, not to throw another name into this too, but Marshall Rosenberg with the nonviolent communication is another huge, huge influence of mine, because I think the vast majority of us don't realize what kind of harm and negative perpetuating we're doing by throwing bad words into our relationship. I mean, the things that we say, we don't realize how that impacts our partner. And so, yeah. So Stan Tatkin and Marshall Rosenberg's, both of those, they would have been buddies if they ever met in real life. And I think their attitudes toward connection and more self-awareness about how we're impacting the relationship, they're huge influences of mine. And there's Wired for Love that Stan wrote, and there's Wired for Dating. So in case you're not in a long-term relationship, Wired for Dating is great too. And all of it talks about attachment and in a compassionate way and what we can do within ourselves and within the relationship to make it better.
These are all great principles when it comes to growing more secure. That kind of nonviolent, effective communication. I mean, look, Words have the power to break people down, and they have the power to build people up. And you get to choose how you wield that power. And that is a big responsibility that many of us don't really take accountability for.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one of the things that I do as a coach all the time is to help to intervene when folks might be even speaking negatively about themselves. Because it's interesting, they'll characterize, I want to feel less anxious. And I stop them and I say, well, let's actually flip that on its head. What is it that you want more of? You want to feel more secure. We're not just looking to reduce the anxiety, because that's focusing on a quote unquote negative experience and limiting what is a very natural human emotion to experience. Instead of that, maybe we can honor that that is a natural thing to feel, and that you're going to feel that way from time to time, regardless of however much work you might do or not do. And instead acknowledge that you want to feel other emotions. You're not healing to reduce your anxiety. You're healing to access more joy and gratitude and comfort and stability and presence and peace and easygoingness. And that's a big shift for folks that they don't often realize. And that starts with how we use language.
Yes.
And following people that use that kind of language is a great way to soak this up. And if you're watching this or listening to this, Rikki is a great resource for phrases that you can use, really tangible, practical interventions, even like lines that you can throw out there that can help to change the trajectory of not only a conversation, but how you can approach conflict and the nature of a dynamic or the relationship.
Yeah.
Generally.
Thank you for saying that, Chris. I think that's a huge part of my account. It always will be. My Instagram account is, I feel like having phrases kind of in our bank that we can pull out when things are tough and we're not sure what to say. I think that's one of the things that changes the atmosphere. Even if it sounds kind of wooden or awkward at first because we're not used to saying it, those kind of things become the way that you talk to your partner after a while with enough practice. My own partner and I can't even imagine those kids that broke up 8 times daily asking each other, what can I do to help you feel loved today? We certainly weren't asking that in the beginning, but having phrases like that invite the other person to be vulnerable and connect, and using them on a daily basis, that's the kind of atmosphere changing thing that really squashes the anxious avoidant push-pull dynamic.
Great point about proactively managing the health of the relationship. And not just for the sake of avoiding conflict or preventing it, but for, if you use kind of a metaphor of an emotional bank account for the relationship, you're depositing love into that account. And for those who might be aware of the Gottman Institute and the Gottmans and their work, they espouse the 5-to-1 positive to quote unquote negative interactions as the ratio to aim for or exceed in relationships, because they found in longitudinal studies that the 5-to-1 ratio was what determined whether or not the couple made it or didn't.
Yes.
And it really speaks to what you are saying, which is that you need to pour love into one another. For anxious and avoidant couples, there's a big dominance of criticism and judgment and feeling threatened, and there's a lot of fear. And when that becomes the predominant narrative or energy in a connection, that's really problematic, and it's got to change if you want to make the relationship healthier and improve. Speak positively over one another. Talk about what you admire. Talk about what you want more of from that person, not just what you want them to do less of.
Yes.
Especially if you're on the anxious side and your partner is on the avoidant side. If you're only focusing on, well, you didn't text me, it took you 4 hours, I didn't hear from you. Instead, talk about the fact that touching base with some sort of regularity helps you to feel connected and appreciated. And people respond, talking about language, they respond a lot better to that kind of language, because it's just saying, this is what works for me. It's a form of boundary setting that is inclusive and gentle and
Yeah.
compassionate and collaborative, instead of just critical and saying to someone, well, I didn't like that and that's not going to work for me and you can't do that, which is attacking someone and putting them on the defensive.
It's funny, on my podcast, my co-host Jimmy will be talking about phrases that are like helpful or hurtful, and he'll throw out the hurtful or the harmful phrases, and I can feel myself responding to that even though he's not talking to me. It's literally just an example. He'll be saying you this, you that, and it's like the little girl in me is like feeling like I'm being punished, and then we'll turn around and we'll throw out the good phrases, and even though he's 3,000 miles away and technically a person I've never met in real life, I feel so close to him. Even just hearing him say the loving, kind things or making a request, He said the other day, it was like, hey, it would be really great if we could go out for a date on Friday. And I thought, let's get that man a date on Friday night. I was like motivated to help him, even though, I'm not in that relationship.
I love that.
Words
I
are
love that.
so powerful.
They are. And this really brings us full circle because we've talked about how reading and books have impacted us. And now look at where we are. Imagine if we had never read Attached, and
Yeah.
imagine if you had never learned about the different
Oh, that'd
ways
be
of describing the attachment styles and hadn't ever read nonviolent communication. It was other people's words that helped you to get to where you are now, modeling that for other people. And same with me. There were many books. A Return to Love is one of them. A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I mean, there's so many. I've got blogs on my site, cracklift.com, that go into books that changed my life and books that changed my love life and books that if you're an anxious attacher, you can read, which your first book is on that list.
I saw that. Yeah. Thank you for that.
For healing. You're very welcome. Of course. Yeah. More than happy to refer people to your work. Again, you're one of my favorite people in this space, and I mean that.
That's so sweet.
That brings us full circle because now we're modeling that for other people and being the change that we wish to see and being the models that we wish perhaps we would have had in ways big and small.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't want to speak for you on that front. But for me, I know I'm trying to be the healing companion I wish I would have had.
Oh, no.
Searching in a lot of disparate places and not really knowing what to do or having any structure, right?
That's my exact goal, actually. I'm glad you said that. Once things started to get better, I thought there are other Rikkis out there who need to hear this, and I can do that for them.
And you have, and you
and
are.
I've tried. Yeah, thank you.
You are. You deserve to be lifted up to the full extent here. Your work has impacted so many people. I know this about myself, too. It's still a little bit mind-blowing from time to time to look back on my own journey and be like, wow, I mean, it wasn't really that long ago.
Right,
when
mine either.
I first read Attached, and now look at how my life has completely changed and the impact that this has had not just on me, but on countless other people. And I know the same is true for you.
Yeah.
What do you want people to know about your book as we kind of wind towards the end of the episode here? What do you want people to take away from this conversation when it comes to healing the anxious-avoidant dynamic? Is there anything we haven't covered today that you want the anxious attachers listening to this or watching this to take away from the conversation?
Absolutely. Like I said before, absolutely know that there's hope, but also, and I think we kind of briefly touched on this earlier, none of the work that we do in this is wasted. Even if it doesn't save your relationship or change your relationship and things still kind of go up in smoke, the work that we do on this stuff makes all the relationships in our lives better.
Well said. Sometimes it is the end of a relationship that is the catalyst, the kick in the ass that we might need to do the work that we need to do. And it pushes us towards resources resources and in directions that maybe we wouldn't have pursued otherwise.
Absolutely.
And that is a beautiful thing. It was an anxious avoidant relationship coming to a close that ultimately led to me discovering my attachment style, to reading Attached, and to ending up here having worked with thousands of people across 6 continents, which again is still very mind-blowing to me.
Well, that's an impressive statistic. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. But it really speaks to something very powerful, which is that I'm grateful that that relationship did not last. I look back at myself and how I showed up at that time, and I am proud of the work that I've done and know, because I'm single right now, I know that I'm equipped for my next relationship. You know, I don't have it all figured out by any means, but I know that I'm a lot healthier than I've ever been. I'm the healthiest I've ever been.
Yes.
I know what I bring to the table. I know I've got the skills sharpened in the departments that they need to be.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to, you know, really do that work with
and everything
someone.
that you've done has made you a better friend to others and a better friend to yourself, right?
Yes, exactly. And thank you for pointing that out too. It's not just about, you know, saving this up for my next romantic partner or anything like that.
Right.
This is impacting how I show up for my clients. It impacts how I show up with family and with friends. You know, I don't even know if I would have been able to have this kind of conversation years ago if I were still on the very anxious side of the attachment spectrum, you know. And I look back at myself with such compassion and gentleness and pride and love, you know, and empowerment.
Because we were doing the best we knew how with the tools that we had back then. That's why I get that question from people a lot. How can I stop feeling angry at myself for screwing things up or doing things badly in the past? And I said, you're doing the best you could with the tools that you had. There's something admirable about that too, you know?
I am nodding feverishly for those who are listening. Yes. Yes, absolutely. That is the root of forgiveness, which is something that has impacted my own life very deeply and something I have my clients practice with themselves first and foremost, and also with others. We often carry around a lot of energy from others that we don't realize is still there.
Totally.
Rikki, this has been an amazing conversation. I know that this is going to inspire so many people and give them hope.
I hope so.
And I'm sure that if Rikki, who was struggling in her previous marriage, could hear this, she could have used some of that hope, probably.
Yes. I guess this is the part where I tell people if they want to find me or my work and my content, you can find me at Anxious Hearts Guide on Instagram. Rikki Cloos is a little bit tough to spell, so don't worry about that. Anxious Hearts Guide is me. You can find my books, The Anxious Hearts Guide or Anxious and Avoidant, Healing the Dynamic on Amazon, or my website, anxiousheartsguide.com. I'm around. I love talking to folks. So I welcome the DMs on Instagram. I can't always answer every one of them, but I really do enjoy conversing with people on there. So if I can get to it, I will.
Reach out to Rikki. Go to her website. Buy her 2 books. They are incredible. Her advice is invaluable. She's got lots of tangible, practical advice that you can put into application and into practice right now. So pick those up. Her first book is The Anxious Hearts Guide. Second book is Anxious and Avoidant, Healing the Dynamic. Visit her on Instagram and her website, like she said. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Rikki.
Thanks for having me, Chris.